The morning it happened was like any other. The sun filtered through the thin curtains of our small apartment, casting long golden lines across the worn-out floor. I stretched, still half asleep, expecting to hear the usual sounds. My mother humming in the kitchen, my father pacing as he drank his morning coffee, my older brother grumbling about another pointless day. But the silence was heavy, unnatural. I sat up, the unease creeping in before I could explain why. The air felt different. The apartment, too still. I swung my legs over the bed and called out, "Mom?" No answer. I walked out of my room, my bare feet cold against the wooden floor. The living room was empty. The kitchen, too. No smell of breakfast. No dishes in the sink. My stomach tightened. Something was wrong. I checked my parents' bedroom first. The closet doors were open, but the shelves were bare. No clothes, no shoes. The drawers were pulled out, empty except for a few scattered receipts. My heart pounded as I turned to my brother's room. Same thing. His posters still clung to the walls, but his backpack was gone, his shelves stripped of everything important. I ran to the front door, threw it open. The hallway outside was quiet, the same as always. But they weren't there. They weren't anywhere. Then I saw it. A single white envelope on the kitchen table. My name scrawled in rushed handwriting. My fingers trembled as I tore it open. We had no choice. That was how it started. A flimsy excuse, a handful of vague sentences about circumstances, and then a final line that felt like a blade slicing through my ribs. We left you the apartment, but the debts, we couldn't take them with us. My breath caught in my throat. I stumbled back, gripping the edge of the table as the weight of their words crashed over me. The debts. I didn't even know how much they owed. I only knew that collectors had been calling for months, their voices growing sharper each time. My father had always brushed it off. I'll take care of it. But now I understood. Taking care of it meant running. And they had left me behind to deal with the wreckage. That day, my world collapsed. Part 2. The struggle for survival. The first few weeks after they left were a blur of panic and desperation. I called every number I had for them. No answer. I went to my father's old workplace, my mother's favorite cafe, even my brother's college. No one had seen them. They had vanished like ghosts, leaving me with nothing but their mess. And the mess was enormous. Bills piled up faster than I could process. The rent overdue, the utilities on the verge of being shut off, and the debts. Their full weight came crashing down on me when the first collector showed up at my door. A tall, stone-faced man in a suit handed me a thick folder. "Your family left behind quite the sum," he said flatly. "We expect payment." I was 20 years old, broke, and completely alone. I tried everything. I begged for extensions. I took on odd jobs. Dishwasher, night cleaner, anything that paid. I barely slept, barely ate, stretching every dollar as far as it could go. But it was never enough. Eventually, the apartment was taken from me. The landlord gave me a week to leave, no sympathy in his eyes. I packed what little I had left into a single bag and walked out the door, knowing I had nowhere to go. For months, I drifted. I slept in shelters when I could, on park benches when I couldn't. Some nights, I sat awake, staring at the city lights, wondering how my own family could have done this to me. But anger didn't keep you warm. Resentment didn't fill your stomach. I had two choices, give up or fight. So I fought. I found a construction job, brutal work, but it paid. I learned how to survive on instant noodles and black coffee. I took night classes, using whatever energy I had left to build a future I could control. Years passed. Slowly, painfully, I climbed my way up, from laborer to foreman, from employee to entrepreneur. I saved every penny, reinvested in myself. The day I signed the papers for my first business, I sat in my tiny rented room and let out a breath I had been holding for years. I had done it. I had built a life without them. And for the first time since they left, I thought, maybe I don't need them anymore. Part 3. The past returns. The first message came on a quiet evening. I was in my office, reviewing contracts, when my phone vibrated. A number I didn't recognize. Probably spam. I almost ignored it, but something made me open it. Hey, it's been a long time. We need to talk. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. The name attached to the message was one I hadn't seen in nearly a decade. My brother. For a long time, I didn't reply. I just sat there, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. Then, the call started. Unknown numbers. Voicemails left in voices I barely remembered. My mother, my father. They spoke carefully, cautiously, as if afraid I'd hang up the moment I heard them. We're so sorry. Please, we need to see you. We made mistakes. Just please call us back. I never did. At first, I convinced myself they didn't deserve a response. They had walked away from me without looking back. Why should I give them the chance to explain? But then one day, I came home late, exhausted from work, and found someone waiting on my doorstep. My mother. She looked older, frilier. There were deep lines on her face, her hair streaked with gray. For a second, I didn't recognize her. But then our eyes met, and I saw something I never expected. Regret. Please, she whispered. Just hear us out. I wanted to slam the door. I wanted to tell her to disappear the way she had before. But I didn't. Instead, I stepped aside, letting the past walk back into my life. Part 4. The request for help. English version. We sat across from each other, the silence thick between us. She spoke first, told me everything. The bad investments, the money borrowed from the wrong people, the pressure building until they saw only one way out. Running. They thought they were protecting me by leaving me behind, giving me the apartment as some pathetic attempt at compensation. But it wasn't just an apology she came for. We need help, she finally admitted. We have nothing left. My father was sick, my brother unemployed. They had burned every bridge, and now, the only person they had left was the one they had abandoned. I stared at her, waiting to feel something, pity, understanding, even relief that they had finally told me the truth. But all I felt was exhaustion. You want my help? I said slowly. After everything? She didn't try to justify it. She just nodded. And for the first time, I realized this was what I had wanted all along. Not their money, not even their apology. I had wanted them to need me the way I had once needed them. But knowing that didn't make the choice any easier. Part 5. The Battle of Emotions. English version. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times. In my mind, I always knew exactly what to say. I had planned every word, every expression I would wear. When I finally faced them again, I had pictured myself standing tall, unaffected, watching them squirm under the weight of their own guilt. But now, sitting across from my mother, hearing her voice tremble as she spoke, I felt none of the satisfaction I had expected. Instead, I felt something much more complicated. Anger, sharp and hot, boiled beneath my skin. I remember the eviction notices, the collectors banging on my door, the days I had spent starving because there was no money for food. I remembered the humiliation, the cold, the sheer terror of waking up each day not knowing if I would survive the next. But along with the anger, there was something else, something I didn't want to acknowledge. Pain. Pain because no matter how much I tried to erase them from my life, they were still my family. I clenched my fists under the table, my nails digging into my palms as I stared at the woman who had once been my mother, the woman who had walked away, leaving me behind without a second thought. Now she was here, asking for my help. My father was sick. My brother had lost everything. They had nowhere else to turn. And the worst part? They weren't demanding. They weren't entitled. They were desperate. For years, I had told myself that I wanted nothing from them. Not their love, not their remorse, not even an explanation. I had convinced myself that I was better off without them. But now that they were sitting in front of me, broken and ashamed, I realized the truth. I had wanted this. Not their suffering, but their acknowledgement. I had wanted them to see what they had done to me, to admit that they had failed me. And now that they had, I didn't know what to do with it. I should have been happy. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt lost. Part 6. The Choice. I stood at a crossroads. My mother's eyes pleaded with me, though she didn't say another word. She knew she had no right to ask for more than what she already had. This conversation, this moment, I had the power now. For the first time in my life, the choice was mine. I could say no. I could walk away, leave them in the past where they belonged. I could let them feel the same abandonment I had felt all those years ago. And they wouldn't even be able to blame me. But something inside me hesitated. What if I helped them? Would it make me weak? Would it make me foolish? Or would it make me better than them? I thought about everything I had built, the years of struggle, the sacrifices, the nights spent wondering if I'd ever make it. I had survived. I had thrived. I no longer needed them. But maybe that was exactly why I could afford to help. Or maybe I just wanted to prove to myself that I wasn't like them. My mother waited. My brother, silent for most of the conversation, finally lifted his head. There was something in his eyes, not expectation, not entitlement, but hope. Could I really erase the past? Could I forgive? I took a deep breath. And then, finally, I made my decision.